didn't start off in educational technology. I started off as a brand new special education teacher with basically no training. I finally decided to leave the summer camp world that I'd been working in for a long time and had accepted the fact that my mom was right and I was supposed to become a teacher, and I probably should have done that with my undergraduate degree instead of putting it into history, English, and film production. And sure enough, my mom was right, and I went back and got a teaching license. And in Tennessee, I was able to become an emergency certified special education teacher. So with about 48 hours of training, I was thrown into a classroom with the 6 most violent students in the county. I worked at an alternative school for a really small subset of the population. And I thought I'd do that for a year or two, and it turns out that I loved it. But one of the things I discovered over that period of time was the more that I incorporated technology into my teaching, the more engaged my students were, and the less likely chairs were to go airborne and people were to get hurt. So I started using more and more technology, which led to me getting conned into being the building level technology coordinator, which meant I got to keep doing my regular teaching job and then just help everyone else do things like install Windows updates and install software and match up software with student needs. And then eventually I started to realize I really wanted to go into this full time. So after about 9 years of being a teacher, I decided to go get my PhD and focus on instructional technology and using mobile devices to help students with disabilities. And during that process, while I was there, probably kind of similar to what you might be thinking in some of your stuff, you look at a technology forecast. What's going to be hitting next? You could focus on smartwatches, but at the same time, a lot of the smartwatch stuff has started to happen already, right? In 2010, 2011, I was looking at technology forecasts, and I was getting pretty excited about augmented reality because it was just starting to get practical. I had a few augmented reality apps that I could find out there on my app store on the iPads, and I was working with a group of students who all had intellectual and developmental disabilities at the University of Tennessee. We had a special 2-year program that allowed students with Down syndrome and other developmental disabilities to get a college experience, and that was my graduate assistantship. By the way, we are pretty close to having a program here at WSU for the first time. We've been, Dr. Brenda Barrio and I have been working on that for about 3 years now, and it's gone from an idea on a bar napkin to we have several $100,000 of donor funds, and we are $100,000 away from starting the program, so donations are welcome. But I realize you're all students as well. But when I was working with these students at the University of Tennessee, I found that we started playing around with some of the augmented reality apps that were out there. And one of the things that we discovered was they're really intuitive. Think about how many times you've seen augmented reality in science fiction. Wouldn't it be cool if I could just look at this motorcycle as the Terminator and it would label what model motorcycle it is and tell me how to fix a water pump if I need to do such a thing? That we see those examples all the time in science fiction. And now those things are capabilities in your phone. Top Gun back in the 80s, they'd put that little red circle around the MiG for Maverick. And Maverick's, I realized, wow, this is the first time I think I've given that talk with. I'm not sure all of you were born when that came out. Starting to feel old, but I'm sure that you saw it on TBS in reruns at some point in your life. Top Gun, big red thing around a MiG. You now have that exact same capability in your phone. You can open up an app called AR Plane Finder, and it's kind of boring around here because it's the Seattle flight. It's a flight back to Seattle. But in places with more planes, it's much more interesting. And so if you went to Seattle, you could see, oh, that plane is headed off to Singapore. That's really cool. So you have that capability right now in your phone. Now in the 80s, that obviously cost millions of dollars and it was gigantic to get inside of a jet. And now, you've got, your phone will do those things. So I started to focus on augmented reality and virtual reality. And it's been, at first, I definitely got people who were telling me, you might be too narrow. I'm not sure this technology is going to take off. And I had a really kind of narrow publishing little area that I worked in. And I was really excited 2 summers ago when it turned out, wow, my guess was definitely on. That was probably the best decision I've ever made in my life, professionally anyways, because my phone started ringing suddenly because, hey, everyone is stomping through all of these yards playing Pokemon Go. Has anybody thought about using it in education? Yeah, we've got a bunch of publications about that almost no one's ever read. And now people were reading them, which was also weird because, you know, if you've I guess you can imagine all of those articles that you have to read. People generally only read them because they have to read them, but more people were suddenly interested. So my little thing would go, wow, 30 people read your article yesterday. I was like, 30 people read my article last year, so that's awesome. So it's been kind of an exciting time in the AR world. So what I'd like to do is show you a couple of things. First, this is going to be a huge market in augmented reality and virtual reality in the next couple of years. And you know, $150 billion, that's going to start to rival the impact of the mobile phone eventually. Why this matters for me in particular, for students with disabilities, we generally see in technology for students with disabilities that technologies generally get implemented for business, video gaming, other industries first. Then maybe into tourism, then education, and then maybe eventually for students with disabilities. My students with developmental disabilities tend to be some of the slowest technology adopters out there. That and, you know, them and the very elderly. You know, we, unfortunately, while these tools have a lot of great promise, you know, someone has to get out there and start to demonstrate some of those, what that promise would be. Before we play around with all the tools, I just want to kind of go over the general mixed reality continuum. I probably don't need to spend a lot of time on this because you guys are in computer science. But when I do this, my general audience is a group of teachers or pre-service teachers or teachers out in the field. And really have to spend a lot of time on this, unfortunately. All right, this is reality. This is where we are currently. This is real. Augmented reality is part of the mixed reality continuum, defined by Milgram and Kishino, if I'm saying it right. And it's just a little bit of digital information overlaid on top of the real world. It drives me almost crazy a couple times a week as I read an article that misuses these terms pretty frequently. That and saying disabled people versus people with disabilities. Between those two things, I go neurotic just about every day of the week. But that's a little off topic. So our next little thing here, augmented virtuality. That's something you'll probably never hear. Back in the day when they were defining these terms, they thought they needed a separate one here. Almost nobody in the field uses it anymore for whatever reason. If you really just want to think about it as kind of bad AR, pretty good AR, and we'll have some good examples of that. But that's really all those two terms mean. And then true virtual reality, where I put on some goggles. For students with disabilities, they both have really great capabilities, or just in education in general. Which technologies are you more excited about? There's not a right or wrong answer. What are some limitations of either? Yeah.
I've only seen like VR in video games.
Yeah.
So, but I know like Oculus,
Yeah.
which is very expensive, and it also currently, I guess they're working on a backpack, but right now there's a cord, and you have to have a lot of room, and you have to be very careful that you don't trip over the cord.
Yep.
So that's a limitation.
That's a huge limitation. It's massively expensive, whether it's an HTC Vive or an Oculus Rift, and we've got both over in the Assistive Technology Research and Development Lab. You're more than welcome to come visit sometime if you haven't got a chance to be hands-on with them. But yeah, they're both really expensive for, you know, you're really talking $1,500 to $2,000 to kind of get in the door. Your phone, you probably already own. You know, it's for an AR option, that's more practical. The other thing is, think about if you're trying to support people in the community. Walking around with a giant VR backpack to recreate reality that is around you doesn't make any sense. Also, you'd be dragging all of this stuff behind you or carrying around a big VR backpack. And I'm trying to get my individuals in the community engaged as much as possible. Carrying around a big VR rig definitely just makes you look like a very strange space person coming in from another planet or something. Probably not what we want in the community. I mean, when I play something or try something out on the VR system in my lab, I shut the door. Because the last thing I want is somebody coming up to me going, "Hey, Don," tap me in the head. I do not like it when I'm in a VR thing and I'm fighting zombies or playing around with Google Earth and exploring something, and then somebody goes. It's like the most unnerving thing ever. So that's obvious limitation. But the biggest one, I think, just kind of inherently here is AR has a much greater potential for mobility. Whether it's smart glasses or the device in your pocket, just being able to be mobile makes such a huge difference in what you're going to be able to do. That concept of on-demand learning, an internet browser, not to help you search for something across the world, but to search and engage with the things that are right in front of you. And that's where I think AR has a lot of promise. So across the way, we have the Assistive Technology Research and Development Lab and are trying to work on building a more inclusive future. This is an example of kind of a basic AR app that was out a while back called 4D Anatomy. And it's by a company called Daiquiri. And one of the things that we'll see in some of these examples is these technologies kind of went from a fairly basic level to, man, there's some pretty neat interactive things that are happening now. This is a little pilot project we did with a student with an emotional disturbance who hated working on sight words. Working on sight words for 45 minutes without problems. For someone who occasionally would make chairs go airborne, this is a pretty good day in my world. It's a small niche, I know, but relatively engaged individual going, look, the words just make their own little definitions. And I just matched these pictures up in an app called Aurasma, where I can look at something and match something up. Here's one from about 6 years ago. This is an app called Layer. And as we're talking about the internet browser for things around you, this is a good example. I'm at Pearl Harbor. I look over at that ship. I mean, I knew it was the USS Missouri, but I just wanted to prove that I could do this. And I'm using an app called Wiki Loves Monuments in the app, or a little layer in this app called Layer, and the layer is called Wiki Loves Monuments. I look over there, see USS Missouri. If I click on it, it takes me to a web page telling me more about the USS Missouri, the same for the Arizona. Being able to have an internet browser to help me explain things around me, it's like the best of when you go to a really nice museum and it's like, if you want to learn more about the shoes in this exhibit, press 249. If you want to learn more about the swords, press 47. I'm like, well, I'd rather learn about swords than shoes. Here's one that we did for also with students with developmental disabilities to help them navigate independently. You probably know someone in your life who is not good at using paper maps. It might be you. You probably know somebody who even struggles to use a Google map. I'm the blue dot trying to get to the red dot. No, man, I'm the wrong way. I got to go the other way. So, is there experiencing the blue dot, red dot chase there? Translating a two-dimensional map to our three-dimensional world is a challenge for some people. Any challenge here navigating? You're getting heads-up directions on your phone. My students with developmental disabilities hold up their phone, got this little message, home is that way. They knew that home was that way. If they turned this way, they didn't see the little thing that said home. That's much more intuitive. And we had to go over some basic things like, don't jaywalk. Let me explain to you what jaywalking is. And then I had to explain on a college campus, I know everyone else is jaywalking, but I seriously need you to not jaywalk. And no, you can't cut through all the buildings. But other than that, it worked really well. That is a really intuitive way of, taking our, helping support somebody navigate in a three-dimensional world around us. Same type of idea here, also using Aurasma. Coffee cup that provides its own instructions on how to make coffee. While a task like making coffee or completing all the steps of using a washing machine might seem relatively simple and basic. If you're trying to help somebody with a developmental disability, that's an IQ, they'll generally have an IQ under 70. That's 1% of the population. Multi-step tasks are, like doing all the steps of a laundry machine are really difficult. And here we've been able to provide, this context-aware video basically, where it sees the coffee cup, it knows what it's supposed to do, and helps them complete it. So those were some kind of basic examples. Yeah.
Could you explain that a little bit more? And also,
Yeah.
I'd be interested in, once the video starts, does it go to completion, and are they able to do the task to completion, or if they need it to stop, like how does it work?
So the first time we did this, we set it up as a complete run-through-it video. And it took about 2 to 3 minutes to go through all the steps of making the coffee in the demo video. We decided it was better to break those up a little bit more, so we started doing things that were more step 1, trigger, step 2, trigger, because that was a more effective way of doing it. Also, it was easier to fade prompts. One of the things that we like to do with our students with disabilities is to try to fade those prompts as much as possible. We're going to start off and give you as much support as possible. All right, can you do the first step independently? Yep, I'm really good at the first step. Okay, how about the second step? So eventually we were numbering things, and the little items had their own little trigger. So
Do you have a pilot for that? Like, that we could actually see?
no, not of making coffee.
Okay,
But-
or something else? Because I'm
Yeah.
thinking for the RAS project right now, that this would be really good for them to take a look at.
Yeah, so I'm going to
Oh, you don't have to show it to us right now, like when
Okay.
you're live
Well,
or
I'm
something.
definitely going to show you
Sure.
a video of it at some point. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and switch over to my iPad here. Wake up.
But you have some of this in your lab that we can see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the easiest one, the easiest augmented reality app to get started with is called Aurasma. Come on, load up. I had just signed in, so it would work fast. Okay. And for my dissertation work, you saw that student doing the vocabulary project initially. I tried to make it a little bit more complicated this time and made these little vocabulary words for science vocabulary terms, but you could do the exact same thing with step 1 of a multi-step task. So I'm going to look at this chloroplast here. I made this incredible high quality video myself. I know it's shocking, but I made these little 30-second videos and matched them up with these pictures. And I wanted to try to make sure that this was something that was teacher possible, that a teacher could actually accomplish, in their time, or teach their students to do this, because that's really where you start to see some, ability to scale it up. All right, your team's going to make chloroplast. Your team's going to make vacuole. And then everyone makes up their little videos, and then you have this interactive word wall, which is a really fun way of teaching those types of science vocabulary words. But you could do the exact same type of thing where step 1 of this process is, I look at this little thing here. You can see that each little card that I've made has enough detail that it functions basically like a QR code. It recognizes that it's supposed to do something and takes it away. So is that kind of helpful? And then let's look at a more up-to-date example of AR. So this is an app called AR Atlas. If I can, where did I put you? All right, so we've got our skeleton friend here, and I can start to dissect my skeleton friend. First time I did this with the teacher audience, I did it with the whole human body, and teachers are just as mature as middle schoolers. They're like, he's naked! And I was like, yeah, sorry. But anyways, so I can actually zoom into the brain. I can interact, and I think you got a little bit of slack you can work with. So feel free to just play around with it if you want to. But this is a much stronger example of what the technology is capable of now. That first thing that I showed you was triggered by this piece of paper. I move this piece of paper, the video follows it around. Here we're able to we might have to back out a little bit here. But this guy is placed right here and registered right here. Not bound to a trigger or anything like that. It's able to physically read this surface and make some decisions. From a technology standpoint, what's available now through Apple's AR kit and I think for Google it's AR Core, is light years ahead of what was capable through just using it in just Unity 2-3 years ago. So, and I never get to talk about Unity because teachers don't care about any of that stuff. So this is kind of a fun audience for me to talk to. Let's look at, I was thinking it'd be fun to just see some of the capabilities of this technology and have some discussions. Would anybody mind me writing just a little bit on their arm? And I need a volunteer who doesn't mind their arm being on camera. Come on down, what's your name? Allie. All right. This is the least educational, I don't know, I'm gonna probably show you some other not very educational things as well actually, but all right, so. All right, so we see this. Yeah, so let's see. There we go.
You go there.
Yeah. All right. See if we can get it to detect the smile here. I might have to write on your arm again. It wasn't quite square enough. So, yeah, sorry about this for you. Yeah, let's see. Okay. There we go.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have this little tattoo. It's been able to kind of overwrite the incredible artwork that I gave him and overlay this tattoo and keep it registered right where it's supposed to be. So kind of cool. Now, thank you. You're free. Yep. All right. So we have the capability to take an object, or you have the capability, because honestly, you guys are way more technically proficient than I am. But you have the ability to take an object and completely rewrite it with digital information. So to the user's point of view, that it looks totally different. That's kind of cool, I think. You could probably do some pretty interesting things with that. Google used that to use something that you probably use. If I can find it. Anybody have a book? Everybody's like, no, we have laptops, you idiot. Anything with some text on it? Yeah. All right, he gets extra credit. He's been very helpful. So this app called Google Translate, you've probably used it. Over here, they've got this cute little camera. You click on the cute little camera. And I have now taken English into Spanish in real time. The less text I put on the screen, the better it does. You know, this is pretty dense. It's not perfect. It's better than I am, but it's definitely not perfect. Now, in my special education technology focus, this is kind of helpful. But if it can do this right now, Do you think it's possible that maybe in 5 years, if you work really hard on it for me, that you could take 8th grade reading material and drop that down to 5th grade reading material for my struggling readers? If you can take it from English into Spanish or English into Arabic like that, without having to take a picture and having to, have it do each word individually, but just boom, it's another language. Couldn't we, it's a little bit more complicated for sure than just simple word substitution, but it's possible maybe. That would be pretty exciting for struggling readers. Reading disabilities are the most common educational disability. 60% of all students in special education have a reading disability like dyslexia. Statistically, some of us do in this room. That is something that would be really powerful. If you've ever looked at an 8th grade or 9th grade biology textbook and you put it into Microsoft Word and you do the little word readability test, you will often find that 8th grade science textbook is written, it reads at a 10th grade reading level. If I'm already a struggling reader, I'm 2 grade levels behind, and I'm working as hard as I can on 8th grade stuff, giving me a textbook that reads at the 10th grade level is a real kick in the bottom. I mean, that's just frustrating, right? But here's a potential area where we can overlay and change some things. Another kind of interesting one that's out there, other than Ink Hunter, which is also awesome. Let's look at the Yelp app. Anybody have the Yelp app on your phone right now? Down there at the bottom, there's a little option called Monocle. And as I walk around the room here, looks like Birch and Bartley's over that way. I actually knew that already. But Tokyo Soul's over there. They're not really getting great reviews, but neither is Birch and Bartley, actually. Man, Zoe. Somebody needs to give Zoe some love. I actually think it's good. But look right over there. It's kind of got mixed results there. So we've another example of where a company's just built an AR for an internet browser to help us explore the world around us. If we can get that onto eyewear, that's kind of the next big, I think, technical hurdle. We want it to look something a little smaller than the Microsoft Hololens because, let's be honest, this is not the world's most fashionable piece of eyewear. I'm definitely not going to be rocking this walking down the street. It's, one of my goals is to try to make sure that my students with disabilities feel included and feel just like everybody else. Putting this on their head is an immediate failure. Also, it's kind of just a social failure for me walking up and down the street. Also, it doesn't really work well outside at all. It reads walls, and the lack of consistent walls outside tends to cause some pretty serious problems. But it can do some pretty interesting things. If I place, let's say, that same video of how to use a washing machine, I don't have to have that trigger anymore. I can place it above the washing machine, and it always lives right there at the washing machine. If you're focused on, let's say, smart houses for people with age-related disabilities, you could use smart glasses, possibly something smaller, to set up instructions for that coffee maker or instructions for the washing machine right there. And possibly use those sensors to provide feedback through the device. Hi, you've forgotten step 2. You definitely have to turn this device on. Or, hey, it's empty. You need to take it out of the washing machine or all your clothes will end up smelling funky because they've been sitting in there, which happens to me sometimes. All right. So that's another kind of interesting one. One of my friends, she has cerebral palsy and has gone blind. And she uses an AR app to identify objects around her, and it tells her, now it's AR because I get to see it, but she's not using the visual part of it, but it is kind of context aware. And think about a really kind of common problem for somebody who has vision impairments. You like Diet Coke. Diet Coke cans feel exactly the same as Shasta cans. One of those things is good, and one of them is disgusting. It's Shasta. It is disgusting. But the cans feel exactly the same. You could take this object over to a can, and let's pretend this was a can.
Marker.
Thank you. Shh. That's not.
I'm not sure.
Really, it's a hand. It's not perfect, but it works really well with, and it's learning all the time. But we're a couple years away from being able to combine lots of these features into smart glasses, where I could look at, we can do this individually now with like apps called Leaf Snap. I can look at a leaf and it'll tell me, this is a sycamore tree. This is some type of Canadian maple thing. Cool. I'm not the person who's in charge of that. But if I can do that and use object recognition and look around the world and have things labeled for me, I would love to walk around the woods and go, what's that? What's that? And just be able to look at objects. I would be much more excited about learning all the different types of trees if it was, faster. Because I don't want to have to write down everything and look into a field manual and figure out a leaf. I'd rather just boop, boop, boop. And we have those capabilities right now.
So what is doing that object recognition?
So it's an app called AI Poly. And they've somehow have mapped all of these objects, and through lots of image recognition, it looks and goes over to something. You guys know what that is. I know not to say the cloud anymore because the cloud's really just still someone's computer. But it's going out somewhere and doing that object recognition. Another potentially better example of, you can kind of see the process, is an app called Blippar, which is, I think like every app team really just tries to come up with the weirdest name. All right, here we go. Oh, look, it's hand. So here we can actually see it trying to get, as it's starting to figure things out. Okay, there's definitely equipment, computer, technology. I know it's trying to do the placement. And then if it can get sure about something, or my hand. Let's see if it likes my, aha, that's definitely a hand. Let's see if I can reach the telephone. That's a phone. I should have brought a longer cord, sorry. Okay, I'm trying, anybody have a drink can or something? Yeah, let's see. Some likely object that it would know. Water bottle, woo! So this one kind of gives you an example of what it's trying. It's going, it's something. You can see the little, it's trying to get close. If it keeps getting hit over and over again, it'll go, yes, that's definitely a water bottle. So here you go. All right, I've got like 5 minutes. So trying to think of all the fun things I want to show you. Let's show you an example of what you can see on the Hololens.
Recording.
So this is over in our lab, and this is an app called Lifelike, and they've spelled like with a Q somehow. So yeah, Lifeek. I was saying Lifeek for a long time, and then someone told me, it's like, you idiot. I was like, oh, okay. But I can walk around this 3-dimensional model of the shark, and it's like a megalodon, I think. And I can pull up a little scale model of a human looking like it's about to get crunched by a megalodon. And yeah, here we go. And like, I do not want to see sharks that big.
That's a big shark.
Sorry, I didn't really remember I said that. But that's staying in place. It's registered really well. One of the things that we look for in AR is the ability for the object to stay registered. If I can keep the video or wherever it's supposed to be in place, just like, Google Translate wouldn't work at all for that AR capability if it wasn't able to map very precisely where it was supposed to be. The more we can map and keep it, the little AR animation where it's supposed to be, things go better. There's a lot of the early examples of AR, it would look at a tracker and it would kind of, you might like lose the little person, or if it was supposed to make the animation go vertically this way, it would go, yep, sure, and then you have a little person walking on their side and the kids are like, this is broken and it's not working. So the quality of the ability to register an object in place has improved a lot in the last couple of years. All right, so that's what it looks like on the HoloLens. Here's a little mapping application on the HoloLens. I can rotate, this is Seattle here, and I can play with Seattle. And I didn't bring a whole lot of,
Downtown Seattle.
okay, shh, sorry. So the HoloLens is generally thought of as an AR application because it's overlaying, individual objects. But it can actually be a VR tool as well, because
This is Titanosaurus.
if you overlay
Largest known dinosaur or
an immersive 3D video like this one, this is shot through the HoloLens. You can kind of see like some
65 feet.
shading back there. Those are the lights inside the lab.
Building just
And this is filmed from the HoloLens.
length could reach 130
And it's got a limited field of view right now.
at almost
But we're seeing more devices that are starting to
the weight of 10 African
be
elephants.
true mixed reality devices. Microsoft is trying to sell that mixed reality toolkit really strongly,
Standing in front
though
of the Titanosaurus
most of us in the AR and VR worlds go,
reach only 20
you're not quite there yet, but because it's really more VR. But
would not be afraid
here's
of
at least
predators.
an example of what that looks like. Here's one of our students using a virtual reality rig. This is an HTC Vive. And they're playing a game called Verzoom. And how this works is they ride this bike, and the bike is a game controller. And the faster they pedal on the bike, the faster the race car that they're in will go. And they're racing against other people, and they look over, and there's a cute little race car beside them, driven by a dog. If they look in the rearview mirror, they're actually a cute little dog. Or they can be on a kayak, or they can be riding a horse. The faster you ride the bike, the faster the horse goes. You can be on a flying horse. Don't do that one. Because if you have problems riding in the backseat of a car, do not ride the flying horse. I cannot ride in the backseat of a car. I can do the race car just fine, but the flying horse, that's not okay. Because when it lands, there's that moment of, you want there to be like, even if it was just a little bit of haptic feedback, it would be enough for like my brain to go, okay, we hit the ground. But instead it just feels like, and we're still falling. And I'm going to get off the bike now and go drink some water. But the students did incredibly well with it. Now, why on earth am I having students ride VR exercise bikes? Students with developmental disabilities are more prone to low muscle mass. They're more prone to a sedentary lifestyle. Their K-12 experience tends to be the highlight of their physical activity in their lifetime, unfortunately. Many students, this is broad strokes for sure, but many times people go to sheltered homes after they leave the K-12 system and leave their parents' houses. Some of those places are great and are providing good opportunities for work and internships. Some of them kind of stink. There are definitely some out there where there might be somebody who says, hey, here's the Xbox controller and some Doritos, I'll be back in an hour. Well, that's not really a winning combination for a healthy lifestyle. So with this study, we were able to prove that our students, with the opportunity to just, and some encouragement to use the exercise bike, they would bike for about 2 to 3 minutes. VR exercise gaming, they biked for 22 to 24 minutes. That's a whole lot closer to that recommended 30 minutes a day of physical activity. So good kind of proof of concept that, hey, here for a relatively low cost and still keeping everybody contained, we can really hopefully make some impact. So, and I didn't bring as much VR stuff because it's really big and I was tired this morning. And it takes a long time to set up. But one of my absolute favorite ones here is Google Earth VR. And it's available on an HTC Vive and on an Oculus Rift. So if you have one, find one, steal one, or want to come by the lab and try it out, Google Earth in VR is by far the coolest thing that's out there right now. When you can just zoom in, I can go right to the Grand Canyon, right to the trailhead that my wife and I did and hiked for 4 days and go, man, I'm so glad I don't have to go down that right now. But I can see the terrain mapped just as it was, and it's a great way to scout out a hike before you do it. It's a great way to just go to a city before you visit it and go, all right, these are all of the places I'd like to see. Or just to be blown away by architecture and the physical characteristics of the Earth. Google Earth in VR is incredible. So if you get an opportunity, please try that out. I think I'm out of time, so how about maybe 5 minutes for questions? Yeah.
One thing that I'm interested in, wonder if there's been work on this, is kind of a seamless transition between virtual reality and augmented reality. So if somebody is in augmented reality and they're not quite sure what to do next, what will happen if I push this button on the stove? They're going into the bank and they kind of want to run through the scenario before they do it in reality. Does that exist in the research world? Has it been?
Not so much seamless, but one of the, I think, kind of the lowest hanging fruit options out there right now for early researchers is to work on that idea where we could take 360-degree video, because 360-degree video is cheap right now. You can get a really nice 360-degree camera for about $500. You can get an excellent one for $70.99 or $7.99. It's called the Views. It's got double cameras and will do true stereoscopic 3D. And then you could do lots of exciting things with it. I tend to do things that you would probably consider pretty boring, like help somebody with ASD. Let's go ride the bus for the first time. Let's practice riding the bus. Bus number 3. These are all the sights and sounds you're going to see as you walk onto bus number 3. Go pay for the thing, and then show your Cougar card since we're here in Pullman, and then you're off to the races. And these are all the sights and sounds of the bus. Being able to prep someone ahead of time is a really powerful way, whether it's someone with an age-related disability or somebody on the autism spectrum or somebody with Down syndrome, prepping them, that kind of video modeling practice ahead of time. Now we can do that point of view, 360-degree video modeling. So I think that's one of the easiest kind of transitions to that. Now eventually you would want to be able to kind of fade that out a little bit more seamlessly. Or maybe you could use smart glasses that could, all right, hey, we're about to board the bus. By the way, these are the steps that you need to do, and kind of have it in top left or top right-hand corner, just a little small prompt. One of the things that, we've had some work around is, like using Google Glass to help people in employment-related situations. All right, you're looking at the copying machine. All right, what's next? And you teach. I didn't do this project, but one of my good friends did. She worked on kind of that similar type of machine learning where it recognizes the step of the process by taking a picture, analyzing the picture, and telling the person, all right, the next step is this. And what was nice about that was if the person who was learning how to use the copying machine or completing the copying task could do a couple steps by themselves, they didn't have to listen to all the other ones. They only had to ask what was next, and it was recognizing, all right, you don't have it on double-sided, so now you need to do that. And it was able to do that just through image recognition. So that was a kind of one of those kind of transition steps, I think. Other questions? If you're interested in learning more about any of this, one of the things I recommend to teachers, and I recommend it to you as well, just open up your phones on your devices and go to your app stores, and whether it's Android or iPhone, sorry Windows Phone users, it's pretty limited AR world for you, but there are hundreds now of augmented reality apps, and I'm sure many of you have heard that here in the next year, Pokemon Go's creator, Niantic, is making the Harry Potter version of Pokemon Go, which will be, Harry Potter Go, and you won't see me that month, or you will see me running around town with my daughter, because we embrace a Harry Potter tradition of every Christmas where we watch all the movies. So we are definitely going to be running around, throwing Patronuses and doing lots of dorky things. And I imagine many of you might be doing the same thing. But the other thing that that they're talking about is it's going to be a much more interactive version than it was last time. At least that's what it sounds like right now. I imagine some of you played Pokemon Go, you probably noticed you couldn't walk around the Pokemon. The Pokemon always kind of stayed in front of you. It was there, but it was just kind of hanging out in the picture. There's hope that it's actually going to be much more registered to the ground, and I could walk around just like we could walk around our skeleton guy here. So we'll see. Yes?
So a lot of these augmented reality tasks have a lot to do with image recognition. Do you know what kind of machine learning tools or techniques they use to optimize that?
I don't. The companies that I would point you towards, though, Blippar, AI Poly was the first one that I met with at CES, and I think they had something like 13 million different objects that it could potentially recognize, which seems like a lot until you try to take it into a room and go, not that one. But but one of the nice things with AI Poly, and the other one that's out there is Tap Tap Go, which is also for people with vision impairments. I like AI Poly better because it puts up the words on the screen, and I think it's more helpful for people who might also be struggling readers. Look, this pen, this is how you spell pen. But those would be the ones I would start with, and I think I know the people at AI Poly would be happy to talk to you about that stuff, because they were really, really helpful when I met with them. Also, if you ever get a chance to go, CES is like a winter wonderland. It is the most magical place on earth. So I highly recommend it. I feel sad every year that I'm not there now. Anyways, other questions? I think one of the things that we can hope for in the next couple of years, right now everything's kind of siloed. I'd like to use this, one app to do this one specific task. And I think we'll see a little bit of just more of a blending. Oh, hey, you're now in this situation. I'm your smart glasses. Let me tell you about this. And how many of you have ever heard of a company called Magic Leap? All right. So in the AR space, by the way, I know we're about out of time, but I just really wanted to share this one thing. Okay. This is a really under the radar company called Magic Leap. And In the AR space, they've been consolidating power, hiring people for the last 4 years. There are no photos of what's filming this. We don't know yet, but it's supposed to be coming out in 2018. Look for Magic Leap. When it happens, it will be the 800-pound gorilla in the AR space. From the patents, what we know are, this is the HoloLens. The HoloLens makes these little mirrors and projects on these little glasses in front of us. Magic Leap projects directly into your eyeball. I don't know how that works. I saw an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where they had something just like that, and it took over the ship.
This might be the future of computing.
But
This is what the world could look like with Magic Leap, a new technology which stands to...
now, this will either end up being the greatest case ever of vaporware that will never come to fruition, or will become a pretty cool technology, I think. So as you're learning more about AR and VR, this is one of the companies I would definitely say to keep your eye out on, because if they can make this, and some of the demo videos are absolutely incredible, so I'll let you check those out on your own. But as we move towards that next generation of what this technology might look like, think about using Magic Leap, scrolling through, checking your email, deciding that, yep, you're ready to type that term paper. Just threw up a 200-inch awesome monitor. Might curve it, pull it in a little bit on the sides, and then type on the largest screen possible. I mean, I've done that a little bit with the HoloLens, except I opened up Netflix and put on a really cool movie, and I was like, this TV is gigantic. And it's not the most practical use of the technology, but it was a lot of fun. So I think you'll be able to see some pretty exciting things here in the next couple of years, and hopefully you'll be able to make some of those things happen.